All right, hello everyone. We are live. My name is Shannon Kennedy, and I am the face behind You're a Linguist, I guess you could say. And with me today, I have a very special guest, Caitlin Sacasas. And together, Caitlin and I are working on something new and exciting in this new year, and we're here to talk about it, give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, and just have a fun chat about language learning. So we'll go ahead and get started. You already know me if you're following my channel, so I'm going to give Caitlin the opportunity to introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Caitlin. I am the creator of 5 Minute Japanese, a language learning blog for Japanese that teaches you Japanese in 5 minutes. Very nice and easy, breaking down Japanese that way. And I am a content creator for Fluent in 3 Months and the Japanese expert there. And I am the co-host of the Sacasas Language podcast as well as Language Conqueror with Shannon. So that's me.
Awesome. So we are basically with Language Conqueror, each month what we do is we feature a new language quest. And the quest is something that you're going to complete in order to really accelerate your learning, take your learning to new heights, and it's not just another study method that you need to incorporate into your life, but instead it's a method that combines with something that you're probably already doing, an interest that you already have. And that way, you can have more fun with your language learning, you can make better progress with your language learning, and you can basically make language learning a part of your life, a part of your passions. So the first 2 months of Language Conqueror, we're talking about goal setting and habits. And now, Caitlin, when we were just live on Instagram, you had a really great explanation as to why these were the first two quests. So I'm going to pass it over to you to kind of share that again.
Yes. Okay. So one of the questions I received recently was kind of like, why are we starting with goal setting and habit building when the whole concept of Language Conqueror is passion-driven language learning through your hobbies and interests and passions, right? And the reason for that is because if you think about in a video game, right, which is the whole kind of concept of the quest, if you are going on your first quest in the video game, you have to first get acquainted to the game. You have to go get your map. You have to go get your weapons, your armor. So when it comes to language learning and getting to the point where you can start learning through your passions, you have to first have your roadmap and your tools. And that is your goal setting and your habit building. So that's why we start with those two, so that you have your map and your tools to succeed the whole rest of the time with us in Language Conqueror. So goal setting is so powerful because when you, people tend to think that goal setting is just coming up with an intention, like a New Year's resolution, going into the new year and being like, oh, I'm going to become fluent in Japanese this year. That's one, that's not a specific goal. And two, that's not goal setting. That's just an intention, an idea. To actually come up with the goal setting, you need to have systems in place to move forward. You need to have a roadmap to follow, to be consistent. You also need to build the habits that make that sustainable and make it fun. So that's why the first 2 months of the course are what they are. They are goal setting and habit building, so that you have those tools. And it is not some froofy thing. It is in depth to help you learn specifically for passion-driven language learning. So we are all about the video game analogy. We used several on Instagram just before this. Like, if you want to check that out, you should go check it out. It was a really good, fun time. Instagram.com/Language Conqueror. I just posted it on there. So yeah, we are all about the video game analogy, and that's really where the quest comes from. You have to have that map. You have to.
The quests also come from mine and Caitlin's background. So Caitlin is a physical trainer, she's really into fitness, and she loves language learning. I'm a professional musician, really into music, but I'm also into language learning. And for Caitlin and I, one of the things that we've discovered in learning languages is that one of the best ways to do it is by combining the language with the things that we love doing. So for me, combining language with music, which thankfully, because of travel and because of the things that I've done in music, languages have always been a part of it. So it's been easy for me to combine those two things. And then same for Caitlin, she loves to combine, exercise with language learning. And those are just two kind of facets of our personalities and things that we're interested in. Both of us are moms, both of us like video games. I love reading, Caitlin loves watching TV and dramas and all sorts of things. And we basically have all of these different interests that we found that in aligning our language learning with those interests, we're able to make significant progress and really enjoy our studies and not have to ever worry about when we're going to have time to learn our languages, because we're pairing them with things that are already a part of our lives. So, Caitlin, do you
Yeah.
want to? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, I think if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that it was never, and I know there's memes about this, but it was never a matter of not having the time, right? Because even if some of us, and not all of us did, some of us had to take on more because of the pandemic, but some of us did have more time, right? And even when we had more time, it was still very hard to keep up our routines or our goals or things that we wanted to work towards for various reasons. So it's really not a matter of having the time. It's a matter of not adding something more to your to-do list and integrating it smoothly into your life. And for me, that's, like Shannon said, it's watching dramas. Like, that was such an easy change for me. I don't even normally like watching TV, to be honest. Like, I don't watch a lot of American TV. I never have. But one of the things that I could easily do was, if I was going to start a new TV show, if I did feel like vegging, I could look up a show in my target language and start watching that instead. So that's my veg time, but I'm still engaging with the language. It may be more passive sometimes. There are ways to make it more active learning, and we talk about that in Language Conqueror too. And that's my month that I host, so it'll be a lot of fun. But even if it's passive because I am tired at the end of the day or whatever, I'm still learning through that TV show. I'm still learning about the culture, the gestures. I'm hearing the language and the cadence of it. I may hear words that I studied recently, and then it's like, oh, I knew that. I understood that. And it helps it click even further. And so by just making that tiny swap, it wasn't adding it to my to-do list. It was just integrating it into my life. And that's what me and Shannon are all about. That's what we found made passion-driven language learning is so powerful for us and improve our language skills so much. It's making it fun. And, I talked about this just a minute ago too, but when you think about your goals in language learning, your goal was never to sit down and study a textbook and study grammar, right? Like, that's not what you came to the language for. Typically, what you come to the language for is because you want to, travel to that country. You want to make friends in the language. You want to have conversations, or you are drawn to the culture and the entertainment and the art and things that come out of that language, and you want to be able to engage with it natively. And all of those things are your passions and your hobbies. And if you want to be able to do those things, you have to learn how to learn through those things. So that's what Language Conqueror is all about. We teach you how to start using your hobbies as part of your everyday life instead of adding something new and sitting and studying with the textbook, because that gets very boring. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like you, I don't necessarily use TV shows for learning, but I do love playing video games. And for me, it was just a really easy switch to go from playing the games in English to playing them in other languages, so that I would get that time with the language. And of course, as you know, if you don't know what you're supposed to do in the game, you're not going anywhere very quickly and you're not making progress. So it's a nice way to kind of force myself almost to really understand the language that I'm playing the game in, because I can't play the game if I don't understand the instructions that are given to me and I don't understand the quests that I need to go on. So we have a question from Annie who says, how are you guys going to find time to do more in a busy schedule? I need your secrets. So Caitlin, do you want to start?
To do more in a busy schedule, yes. We are all about that. We both do so much. It's insane. And I'm sorry if you can still hear my dog barking up there. All the Christmas packages are getting delivered in my neighborhood, and he absolutely hates the mailman, so he's like going crazy up there. And I put him away, but I can still hear him, so apologies. But when it comes to building, not adding more to your busy schedule, again, it goes back to that passion-driven language learning. Not adding more, figuring out what you can do. So again, the first 2 months of Language Conqueror are goal setting and habit building for that reason. Those are the two keys that make that work. So for instance, with goal setting, you want to make sure that your goal is very realistic. For me, one thing that I used to do all the time that was a really big issue was I would think that I had to sit down and study the language for like an hour or more, or I wasn't going to get anywhere with it, because back then I was all about textbook study. And I'm also someone who gets hyper focused, and I need like quiet and the time to really like just absorb what I'm learning when I'm learning something new. Once I became a mom, that was near impossible. And so trying to find that hour to sit and study anymore was just, it was ridiculous. I couldn't do it. And so I went through a phase in Japanese where I fell off, and my language skills just kept, going back to the basics again, where I would have to keep coming. Every time I come back to it, I have to relearn and relearn again. And I wasn't getting anywhere, and these hour sessions were just becoming overwhelming. So one thing that I started doing was, and largely thanks to Shannon, in fact, too, is, switching the things that I already was doing. So at the time when I met Shannon, actually, I was very, very overwhelmed. My husband he's a police officer. He was in the police academy, so he wasn't home. It was just me and the boys. And me and the boy, our second wasn't born yet. And I didn't have time. I was so overwhelmed. And the thought of studying after taking care of Logan and working all on my own all day, I couldn't do it. And so I would, at the end of the day, if I did have time, that was when I would just want to crash on the couch and veg. And my brain was so tired I couldn't do anymore. But when I met Shannon, she was like, hey, there's this cool Japanese show. You should check it out, Terrace House. And I was like, okay, yeah. So that was such an easy switch for me to start vegging out with Terrace House. And it's very interesting because I wasn't studying really at all above what I had to for work. And I was doing the bare minimum. But just from watching Terrace House, I was learning so many new phrases and learning so much about Japanese that when I went back to meeting with my language exchange partner, from not really studying Japanese or speaking it, I was speaking so well. She was like, I haven't studied at all while we've not met, and you have how did you do it? And I was like, I've literally done nothing but watch Terrace House. And so it was just that integrating it into my daily life and making it more simple. Now what I do is I break it into short bursts. I typically I don't study more than 10 minutes at a time now. So I study for about 10 minutes in the morning with my morning cup of coffee, and then I study for about 10 minutes at lunch. And then if I have time, I'll study a little bit more in the evening, but I'm usually pretty brain dead by then. So if I do study, it's watching now my Korean dramas. So yeah. What do you think about it, Shannon?
I do the same thing. So I do find that where I'm at with many of my languages, I do need some time for course book study. But basically what I would do is I would replace that with time I would spend reading other things. So, and again, I do short bursts. I don't imagine that I'm going to be able to sit down and study for an entire hour. Instead, I say, okay, I'm going to study 15 minutes, and then whatever I get done in that period, I get done in that period. And that's something that's really important, is to look at how you're breaking down your study. So there are lots of ways to break down your study. You can do it as, it's okay, I need to complete an entire chapter. That might require more time than saying just 15 minutes or just 3 pages of the course book. So for me, the other thing that I do is you can also, pair your language with a lot of different things. So for me, if I get into a car, I am listening to a language podcast of some sort. So it's already automatically queued up so that when my phone connects to my car, it just starts playing wherever I left off. And it's just not even a choice for me that I need to make anymore. And that's another thing that I do. Decision fatigue is a real thing. And when you have kids, when you have a job, when you have school, when you have all sorts of things where you're required to make so many decisions in a day, at a certain point, you just don't have the stamina to do that anymore. So automating as much of your language learning as possible is just so important, because if you at the end of the day go, okay, I finally have 30 minutes to study, if you need to decide what you're going to study, that 30 minutes is going to be gone and you're not going to be able to use it. So knowing already when you have this kind of time, it's okay, I know I'm going to have 5 minutes while I'm waiting for my coffee to be ready in the morning. So what am I going to do? I'm always going to do this. And then that way, when that thing happens, you're going to pair it with this language thing, this language task, and that way you guarantee that you're going to get language time in your day. So for me, it's things like when my partner and I watch TV at the end of the night, since I don't care too much about TV, I study my flashcards. So however much time we spend watching TV together is how much flashcard time I give myself. If I'm in the car and listening to a podcast, there's other things that I do to pair things. And then again, with the automation, for me, it's really easy to stop taking language lessons because, I don't book them. And then it becomes this thing, it's 2 months, oops, I just realized that I haven't booked a language lesson in 2 months. So what I do is I set a reminder for myself at the beginning of every single month I book all of my language lessons for the month. So that way I'm already committed to them. I have no choice but to show up. And then I go and I get that conversation practice. And I typically do them the same time every single day. It's just each day is a different language. And so that's one of the other things that I do. And again, like, even just video games, as I mentioned, I don't play them in English anymore at all. I play everything in a different language. Sometimes it's based on the availability, like what language that game is available in. Sometimes it's because I'm focused on a specific language and I really want to spend more time with it. I'll even go out of my way to get games that I can get in other languages. So Ni no Kuni is a great game series that I can play in Japanese, and it's, the art is all done by the guy who does, well, you can't see Totoro, but Totoro and everything. So it's
Miyazaki.
Yeah. So it's just, it's amazing. It's a beautiful game, and I can play it in Japanese. And I got it because I could play it in Japanese. And then, of course, I just love the game. So now I have both of them. And and what's cool, too, is with a lot of games now, you can put the subtitles in one language and the audio in another. So Ni no Kuni, I was playing with the audio in French and the subtitles in Japanese, or maybe it was the reverse. But I'm able to practice two languages at once at that point. So it's not necessarily about adding something to a busy schedule. It's about maybe changing how you're fulfilling that schedule.
Yeah, and the other thing too is you don't always have to look at it as this big study session, like I said, but it doesn't even have to be like a small size study session. If you are truly so overwhelmed in this moment right now, that's okay. But you can still engage in your language in very small, easy ways. For instance, so my son is starting to be interested in learning languages, and throughout the day he'll randomly think Mommy, what is this in Japanese? And so then I'll tell him, and that's actually a really good approach as an adult too. So maybe you're sitting at work and you're working and you lean back and you're taking a break and you're like, I wonder what computer is in my language. And so you take a quick second to look it up on Google Translate or whatever. And then throughout the rest of the day, you think about computer in your language the whole rest of the day. So every time you look at it, every time you think it in your head, you use that word. And so that way you start to remember it, and you start to just slowly build upon that during those busy seasons. And that's also a technique I really like to use for vocabulary specifically. And sometimes it's really helpful because it'll give you ideas for things that you wouldn't normally think about, because for instance, not so long ago, I realized I don't know a lot of words for kitchen utensils and things in the kitchen in Japanese. It's just something that never come up. And one day I just realized this, and I was cooking, and I was thinking about Japanese, and I was like, you know what, I should look this up. And so that's what I started doing. So if you just take moments to be curious about your language, that can be really helpful too. So
that's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because I actually, for my post tomorrow, which you guys will see on our Instagram, so definitely go follow us at instagram.com/Language Conqueror. But I'm going to be posting about something that I did in the kitchen to kind of resolve this. And so we buy spices in bulk because both my partner and I love cooking, so we use spices at a fairly rapid rate. So what we do is we buy the big containers, and then we fill smaller containers so that they fit into our spice cabinet. And when I was doing that, of course, you need to label them because a lot of spices look really similar. And what I did is, as I was labeling the spices, I labeled them in Chinese, French, and English. So that way, it's okay, now I know what all of these are in all of these different languages. And each time we, get a new spice or a new bottle, I get the chance to go look those up so I can write them really nice on the bottles. And each time I grab it, I can see it's okay, this is this, and this is this. So it's kind of a just great little reminder to constantly have around. And it's not something that I wasn't already doing. It literally takes 1 or 2 seconds more to write the French and Chinese in addition to the English. I already had to do this chore. So it was just kind of something that I could, maybe add a little bit more time to, but in results also get some language practice in. That lasts way longer than the time it took to look up the words and write them down, because each time I pick up, parsley, I'm reminded that it's persil in French. So it's just really good practice.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I'm going to do that, Shannon. And also one more thing too, going back to the goal setting and finding time for it, and the ladder method and things like that. We did talk about that this week on the Snack Size Language podcast, and it is up today. So if you want to check that out at languageconqueror.com/podcast, you can see that very short episode. All of our podcast episodes are under 5 minutes, so they're quick to listen to and get really helpful insights and tips in language learning phrases. So check that out as well.
And of course, if you're watching this and you'd like to learn more about Language Conqueror, what our upcoming quests are, and how you can have a more passion-driven language learning routine, you can learn more by visiting languageconqueror.com/join.
Yes, exactly. You should definitely join us. It's going to be so much fun. Very excited for the year to get started with it. So why don't we talk about one of the questions we had on Instagram again, about specifically the comparison trap, because that one I think is really common. Because so like someone sees someone like you, Shannon, who speaks 15 plus languages, and you're really busy. So how can they not fall into the comparison trap and think that they should be doing more?
So for me, when it comes to comparing, I ideally like to compare myself to myself. So the kind of metaphor that I gave on Instagram was that I can look at someone else and say, oh, I wish I had their abs, or like, oh, I wish I was as toned as them. But then if I look at myself now compared to myself 6 months ago, I can appreciate that I am more toned than I was. So I'm comparing myself to my past self, not to someone else. And this has been a really effective way for me to kind of dispel any jealousy that I might feel about where I am at in my life. Because I may look at that person, they may be 10 years younger than me, they may not have had kids, they may, just have better genetics as far as metabolism and stuff goes. I don't know what their situation is. I only know my own situation. So it's not fair for me to compare myself to this other person, not knowing these things. And the same is true for language learning. You don't know what background they had in the language. You don't know what kind of methods they're using. You don't know how much they're studying per day. Your ability to study a language, or your time to study a language, or the methods that you're using that you enjoy may mean that your progress is different. And the other thing too is where you see someone else is just a snapshot. So you see, okay, this is where they started, and then this is their 6-week progress. But for you, you're just seeing that 6 weeks. So you don't see what happens on the day-to-day. And the same is true for yourself. You see yourself every single day. You know exactly what you're putting into your language. You don't notice the progress. If I see my body every single day, so I don't notice the days that I'm heavier or the days that I'm lighter, because my body just looks the same to me, because I don't see the big progress. But if I go over to my parents' house, my mom might be like, Shannon, did you lose weight? Or, Shannon, did you gain some weight? And, because they don't see me in a longer stretch of time. So they do see, they remember me as I was before, and then suddenly they see me a little bit different. And that's how your language learning is, because you see that every single day. You don't see the growth that you're making. You don't see the progress that you're making. So you can't compare to a snapshot that you see of someone else of where they're at. We have another question from Annie, and she's asking, is there going to be constant input from us during the quest each month? And she needs a whip to keep her going. So yes, you do have access to Caitlin and I, and you will have regular input from us as a part of Language Conqueror. We are there. There's a community aspect to the course, and you're able to chat with the other people in Language Conqueror. You're able to ask Caitlin and I questions. We are there, and we are available to you. And then if you join Master Quest, which is you also get a monthly live Q&A session with Caitlin and I, and right now during the launch of Language Conqueror, you also even get a one-on-one coaching call with Caitlin and I in that first month. So you will get lots of input from us.
Yes, and even besides that too, the workbook you receive with the quest and all the materials that come with the quest, they are designed to keep you motivated and moving forward throughout the month. So you get a side quest with your main quest, right? Because going back to video games, when you're in a video game, or even if you want to compare it to my favorite thing, which is Star Wars, The Mandalorian, there's always the main episode moving the quest forward, and then there's the side quest episodes where he has some little task he has to go do, and it's still a great episode, but it's not the main task. We give you a side quest with your main quest, so it's something else that you have to think about and work on, that keeps it fun and keeps you moving forward throughout the month. So you can move at your own pace, but we're also there to support you and keep you on track. So you will have that support and that input from us, and we're always here for questions.
Yep. All right. I think it's time for us to wrap up for today. And if you have any other questions, you can find us. The best place to find us is probably on Instagram. So you can go to Language Conqueror on Instagram, send us a direct message, leave us a comment on any of our posts, and we're more than happy to help you out. But in the meantime, just a couple more links for you guys to remind you where to find us. LanguageConqueror.com is where you can find everything related to Language Conqueror. If you're interested in joining us, it's languageconqueror.com/join, and the Snack Size Language Podcast is languageconqueror.com/podcast. So those are all of the links where you can find Caitlin and I and Language Conqueror, of course, and we hope to see you on the inside. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, guys.